Good afternoon and welcome back to another installment of the Ulster Gale. So the last time I did one of these videos, I was rounding up the 9 counties of Ulster's performances and how they got on in the McKenna Cup. Now I'm going to look fast forward on a couple of weeks, and all of our 9 counties have played the first 2 rounds of their National League campaigns. The majority of which have been strong performances, so mixed performances, and a couple of maybe performances that the counties would like to build on and push on from. A lot of positives from all counties, even the ones that have kind of maybe not had as strong a start as maybe they would have hoped, but we'll dive into that in a little bit more detail as this video goes on. So again, I will go through the majority of these counties. I think they're all in alphabetical order, or most of which are in alphabetical order. So first up we have Antrim. Now Antrim, again, coming off a fairly mixed McKenna Cup. They had a disappointing loss to Armagh, and then had a very heartening performance against Cavan. Still lost that game, but they would have been a lot more heartened by that. So their McKenna Cup campaign, strangely enough, has mirrored a little bit of those 2 performances in the McKenna Cup. They had a significant loss to Offaly in the first round. Now they had a very poor start in that game. Offaly raced into quite a sizable lead early in that match, and then they sort of come back a bit in the second half and recovered a little bit in the second half, but obviously left themselves with far too much work to do in that game. Again, didn't get a chance to. I only really seen some limited enough highlights of this game, so it's very hard to kind of base any sort of judgment off limited highlights, and sort of what I've kind of heard from a few people that I know that maybe were at the game or had a bit more access to some of the information from the day. I'm judging by one team doing very strong in one half and another team kind of being slightly more advantageous in the second half would indicate that the wind may have been a factor, and may have played into and built upon our Antrim's slow start in that first half. So I'd say Antrim would have come out of that game coming back up the road from Offaly a little bit disappointed with that performance. Again, I'd say Antrim, again in Division 3, maybe one of the counties that maybe have less resources. I would say the fact that they probably drove down to Offaly on the morning of the match probably played a part. As anyone who's played football over the years knows that if you're travelling a sizable amount for a game, it can have an effect. Most squads these days stop on the way for a wee stretch of the legs, but even still, compared to a team that's closer to the ground, can get there early, can start their preparation early. They're not sitting on a cramped bus with recycled air for several hours as well. It's just better preparation. You're able to get into the game a little bit better and so on. So I'd say there was a multitude of factors probably played into the fact that Antrim maybe didn't do themselves justice in that first game. Do I think that Offaly, does the score reflect the difference between these 2 panels? Again, I don't know an awful lot about Offaly, but I would probably say not. I'd say Antrim's a lot closer to Offaly than what the end result probably dictated. Again, then in their second match, they came out. Like most times in Gaelic football, you will get, if you have a disappointing defeat on the first week, most teams will come out and generally there'll be a wee bit of a fire in the belly for the second week. And I think we've seen that against Down. Obviously Down had a big travel. Both counties had a big travel and from the previous week. Antrim at home I think wasn't that game at home, possibly. I need to double check that actually. I'm not sure, but Antrim seemed to acquit themselves very well and then fell away at the end against Down. Again, Down started the league very well, or played very well in the McKenna Cup. Looked to have started the league very well the previous week against Tipperary, which we'll get into a little bit more detail later on. The big question, obviously, early parts of the league, how much preparation have these squads done? Did the exertions of Down play a bit of a part in that, which triggered maybe a little bit of a slow start, possibly. So I'd say you could have a mix of factors. Antrim having that little bit of fire in the belly after the disappointing defeat the week before. I'd say they would have learned an awful lot from the Offaly defeat as well, which they were able to take into the Down game. I'd say Down with the good win the previous week before. It's always hard to keep that hunger and fire up maybe a little bit, and maybe they put a lot into that match, and maybe there was a wee bit of could have triggered the slow start, which would have been disappointing for Down. The way that Antrim fell away in the end of that game possibly could be a concern for the Antrim backroom team, but overall they went up against one of the previous, before the National League. Everyone would have been, a lot of people in the north would have been predicting Down to do well in the National League, trying to push to get out of Division 3. Offaly maybe a little bit more of a shock, but they are up at the top of the league. They've got 2 from 2. They beat Fermanagh as well the following week, so 2 big scalps for Offaly. Possibly not. Linking into their McKenna Cup finals. So again, I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of these matches with Antrim in them, but things that I did notice in the McKenna Cup and linking this into it, particularly against Cavan, Antrim did look fairly strong around the middle of the park. They're able to win primary ball, which probably could have forced the good performance against Down. Antrim have a good ability there to get their hand on primary ball, and they have looked good in build-up play, even though maybe it is a little bit naive, maybe possibly a little bit at this stage of their development. Obviously, they're going up against teams that possibly played at a slightly higher level, so the squads are maybe a little bit together, a bit longer, maybe are a bit savvier. But I do think there's a good basis there for their build-up play and their ability to win primary ball. So if there's a team if there's a traditionally stronger team at that level, and they're maybe not on their game, or Fermanagh or Antrim, have a point to prove, they can cause teams problems. So there's definitely a really good strong basis there. Again, like I said in the McKenna Cup, due to this lack of experience in dark arts and ability to close out games potentially, which could have linked into the Down match, I do think that that will be the big stumbling block for this Antrim team in Division 3. Judging off the back of the performances, particularly the Down performance, and the fact that they did come back into the game a little bit at the start of the second half against Offaly and seemed to have put up a fairly big fight. From following that match on Twitter on the day, they seemed to be able to put up a good fight. Now their ability to win primary ball and their good solid basis in their build-up play would follow and back that up to a fair degree. They do seem to have that ability to cause teams at this level trouble. I do still think they'll probably struggle a little bit in Division 3. But I think they have the talent to possibly fight their way and keep up and stay up in Division 3. Absolutely. I think there's enough in that Antrim squad, there's enough in that Antrim panel to fight their way and keep and stave off the drop. So overall, I'd say results-wise, I'd say Antrim are probably very disappointed from the opening 2 games. Performance-wise, I'd say maybe they're a bit disappointed with the Offaly defeat, but I'd say probably heartened with the Down defeat. So they've now got 2 weeks to learn the lessons from those first 2 games and try and put them into practice now for the big block in the big 3B block in the middle of the league. So I would say hopeful predictions going forward for Antrim. I do think that they are in the mix for staying up in Division 3. Not enough there, not enough development of that squad. A bit early for them to possibly compete for pushing for a Division 2 slot, but I do think they're well in the fight for staying up in Division 3 at the end of the league campaign. So let's see how their league campaign goes, and I wish Antrim all the best going forward into the big block of the middle 3. Moving on to Armagh. Again, Armagh impressed me an awful lot in the McKenna Cup. Obviously, the results were a little bit topsy-turvy in the McKenna Cup, but there's a lot of core fundamentals, core elements of a very strong team. Obviously, they beat an Antrim team very well and then lost to a Cavan team through a lot of changes and trying to get a lot of players game time. A good battling win by the sounds of it against Monaghan. Again, seen some of the highlights of that game, followed the Twitter updates from the match. So I'd say that match would have really was a good match for them to get into the tank. A good win over their Ulster rivals. As I said in my summary of the McKenna Cup, I did think at least one of the 4 Ulster teams will probably get relegated this year. And Armagh, from their opening 2 results, so they had a very good win against Monaghan and a battling draw against the Mayo team, who has been consistently in the top 4 to 6 teams in Ireland for the last 10-15 years. So I say overall, Armagh have a really good basis, and they've really helped their cause in staying in Division 1. So they've got historically 6 points should guarantee your survival in Division 1. And they're halfway there after 2 games. So again, very, very strong opening gambit from Armagh. The draw against Mayo, again, a lot of very, very solid play, a lot of very, very good build-up play, and they set up and took their scores very well, particularly in that first half. One concern I would have I watched the entirety of the Armagh-Mayo game. Comparatively speaking to Mayo, maybe their build-up play, maybe from the full back line to the middle third, could possibly be a little bit quicker. Again, that could be just early rounds of the league, and that will, harder pitches, drier balls, that will come. Their transition from the middle third into the top half of the pitch, very, very good, very, very impressed with that. So if they can speed that play up, that transition from full back into the middle of the field, I think they will be definitely in the conversation for the top 6 teams in Ireland this year. Very, very strong full forward line. So Ryan O'Neill, Andy Murnan, Rory Grugan as well. They have a lot of very strong players in that forward half of the pitch. The other element that maybe might concern me a little bit is they did go out of the game at midfield for large periods, a large part of that second half. Now that's no shame on Armagh, because that is a very strong, is looking like a very strong midfield for Mayo. They have a lot of very tall, strong, mobile players around that middle third. Mayo teams, I don't know where they get it out of, but they always seem to have tons of energy around that middle 8. They always seem to have strong, mobile players around that middle 8. So they did go out of the match, and Mayo controlled the game in that middle third of the match, which would be a slight concern, the fact that they went out of the game so badly. But what will massively hearten Kieran McGeeney and the backroom team and everyone linked with Armagh is that battling quality. That battling quality was always there in the strong Armagh teams of the 2000s. I'm thinking back to like the Ulster final in 2005 in Croke Park. Tyrone cruise into 4-5 point win. And then in the last 5-10 minutes of the game, Armagh pull a draw out of it and then win the replay comfortably. So that would be that's an interesting development there in that sense. That there's a massive fighting quality with this Armagh team. They do seem to be, their panel seems to be a little bit broader this year. With the condensed season, with the additional matches this year, possibly they might want a few more big burly men around that middle eight for coming off the bench. Jarlath O'Byrne does still seem to be taking a lot of the responsibility for carrying the game around that middle third. But overall, I think Armagh are building very nicely. Their McKenna Cup was building very nicely from their previous season. And this opening 2 rounds of the league is definitely building on what this Armagh team achieved last year. And I do think going forward into the middle third of the National League and on into the Ulster Championship and the All-Ireland Series, I do think this Armagh team have definitely made that step up from a mid-pack team into the best of the rest category in Ireland. The fact that Ulster's going to be extremely competitive this year, I think is going to be tough, but this Armagh team will shock a lot of teams, I think, in Ireland this year. They've got some big games coming up now, and they still haven't secured their Division 1 status. They'll still need at least another win and a draw at least to guarantee that. But they've made a very, very good start. They've got some very strong performance. Again, players that I noticed in the opening 2 rounds of the league, particularly the Mayo game that I watched the entirety of. Jarlath O'Byrne seemed to be very strong around the middle eight. Ethan Rafferty showed fantastic leadership in that second half. He came out, was winning ball around the midfield, was always an option off the shoulder when the Armagh middle eight got turned back by the Mayo defence. He was always there to give an option off the ball. Maybe got a little bit lucky being caught when Armagh got caught out of possession, and Killian O'Connor couldn't convert when he was off his line. But when you play that kind of, with these sweeper keepers that we're seeing developing now, the likes of your Morgans and the Monaghan keeper, I've blanked on his name now, and the likes of Ethan Rafferty as well, that's a risk you're going to take. Again, Armagh do look very strong in the full forward line. Rian O'Neill again showing massive leadership, massive psychological resolve. Like, he missed a fairly simplistic free by his standards in that second half, shook himself down and then kicked the important free at the end. Andrew Mernon won a lot of very good ball on that inside forward line, took a couple of great scores from play. Same with Rory Grugan, again won some great balls. Soupy Campbell was orchestrating a lot of their good play around that middle third, putting balls into the full forward line, was carrying a lot of ball. Did burn out a little bit towards the end, but that's expected in this early parts of the National League. But overall, I think Armagh very hopeful going into the middle third of the National League, and they should have a good year off the basis of their McKenna Cup and the opening 2 rounds of the National League. So moving on, we have now got Derry, and this county continues to impress. A very, very good win on the opening weekend. Kicking big scores, won well, up in Old Beg. So again, they're carrying on that momentum from the momentum of winning the McKenna Cup. They've carried that momentum into Division 2. They got them 2 points on the board from the first weekend. I was following the Louth game on Twitter. I was very, very shocked to see that they just couldn't kill off Louth. Maybe we're being a bit harsh. Mickey Hart trained Louth team. They're always going to be organised. They're always going to be difficult to break down. And they really did push that Derry team. What was great from a Derry perspective is they managed to they got into the trenches with the Louth team in Louth in RD, and they come out the right end of it. So I'd say they'd be very happy with the momentum from winning those kind of battling games is very, very good for momentum. It's very, very good for morale within the squad. And I'd say they probably would have learned an awful lot from that as well. I think Rory Gallagher was coming out saying, maybe he wasn't overly impressed with the performance, but there was a lot. He was saying there was a lot to build on, but they were disappointed with elements of their play. But the win was everything. Getting that W on the board, 4 points from 4, top of the league. So again, they're building very, very nicely. Again, there's still some big teams to come. So we'll see how they get on. I'd say the big shock for me was Kildare losing in their opening 2 games. I didn't see that one coming, to be fair. So in relation to promotion, I think because the top of that table is going to be so tight, I think Kildare are probably out of the running. They could still have a massive bearing on who actually goes up, but I do think it's going to be very, very tough for Kildare to get their promotion after dropping 4 points. They would have needed to have got something out of one of those opening 2 games. They haven't. So, but Kildare could, lose to Meath and beat Derry, and all of a sudden Meath are going up along with Dublin. So we'll have to wait and see. Meath look very dangerous. Their ability to get goals in the opening rounds of the league, very impressive. After a poor couple of years, Meath probably have a point to prove. Want to go back up into Division 1 as well. So we have 3 teams all on 4 points at the top there. I'd say Cork possibly could influence who goes up and who stays in Division 2 as well. I don't think they're strong enough. Didn't mount a challenge this year themselves. But we'll see how they go. One thing, because Derry had a strong season last year, you have the Glen lads that have played a lot of football. They haven't really had much of a break. They've basically played a full year of football and are now back into another full year of football. I do think this Derry team might need to think about later on in the year a bit of mental fatigue and a bit of mental burnout, more so I think than physical burnout at this stage, because physical preparation of these players are so good these days. I'd say there's still that element of physical burnout, but that's maybe for further on down the line, maybe in a couple of years time, with the constant stress on the joints and the muscles, maybe they might start breaking down with injuries maybe later on in their careers more so. But I do think mental fatigue is a big issue, potentially facing this Derry panel later in the year when we come into the business end of the championship. If they're managed well, that might not be an issue, but I do think that's probably one thing that I think the Derry management should be maybe wary of. They still have the 3 teams competing for promotion to come, or that were going to be competing for promotion to come. They still have Kildare, they still have Dublin, they still have Meath to play. So while Derry have made a very strong start, I still think that they still have their big work to do in this league. So building on their McKenna Cup, again strong start, building on that momentum from the McKenna Cup. Bigger battles are ahead of them, but they are building very, very nicely, and they'll have that lovely confidence of having a McKenna Cup medal in their hip pocket. They've won their first silverware of the year. Nobody will care about that come later in the year, but it builds massive momentum at this stage of the season. So Derry still unbeaten, So, and I do think they will. I really hope that the Dublin game's televised. I hope that there's some way that we can watch it on the TV. If not, I will really seriously look about making the long drive up to Owenbeg for myself to watch that game, because I really do think this Derry team will really put it up to that Dublin team up in Owenbeg, or if it might even be Celtic Park, I'm not sure. But I think that's going to be Dublin's biggest challenge in Division 2 this year. So I'm really looking forward to that battle, and I really, really hope that there's an opportunity for us to watch this. So Derry, really, really impressed, continuing to impress me. I do think I would probably put them in the top 2 or 3 for Ulster this year. I would say Tyrone's probably in that race. Armagh have put their hand up in that race. I think Derry's there, have a great chance of retaining their Ulster title. I think they really need to be targeting making more of an imprint on the national stage. They did very well last year, but I think they will really want to push on and try and take a big scalp or bigger scalps in the All-Ireland series. But everything's bubbling nicely for them. They've got their forward unit and midfield unit working very well, and they are bubbling nicely. Donegal. Right. As people know from my video on the McKenna Cup, I was slightly concerned about Donegal, particularly in the early rounds of the league, because as we know in the National League, if you have a slow start in the National League and you don't take anything from your first 2 weekends, it's a very, very tough division to guarantee survival in. So it's great to see them. They got a great win against Kerry. Kerry did have to travel, and they were missing the front 6 from the All-Ireland final the previous year. I know Killian Spillane played, but he came off the bench. He wasn't on the starting panel. Kerry still, it doesn't matter what team Kerry put on the pitch, they'll still have 15 fantastic footballers on the field. So it's never a surprise if no matter what Kerry team take to the pitch, that they've won a game. But I would caveat that none of the 2 Cliffords, Shawnee O'Shea wasn't there, and a few others were missing too. So Kerry were definitely very underbaked for that game, and I think they had a very poor, is it McGrath Cup they play in? They had a very poor McGrath Cup, and they carried that into the National League. But if you're going to get Kerry in the National League and try and get points off them, getting them at home in the opening round of the league is the best possible time to get a Kerry team. Another thing, so again, some of that good raw talent that I seen in the McKenna Cup, again, and put their hand up, particularly against Kerry. Again, didn't get a chance to see the Donegal Tyrone game other than the highlights. Followed it on Twitter. It seemed that Tyrone bullied that game. Bullied the fundamentals of that game and really stamped their authority on it. But that's kind of typical Tyrone. We'll get onto that in a little bit more detail when I go on to Tyrone. But there's an element of big performance against Kerry, that they put an awful lot into getting that first win, and then maybe sold themselves a little short against a Tyrone team that was smarting from a fairly embarrassing loss to Roscommon. Who knows? The one thing that would worry me from what I heard coming out of Oma was they definitely struggled around that middle 8. Is this due to maybe a lot of new players in around there? Maybe a lack of experience around the middle third? Who knows? Because Kerry would have had a fairly youngish squad around that middle 8, particularly their half forward line that would have been dropping into that midfield area. So it was kind of a more even battle. Obviously Tyrone had a very experienced team out, and probably were just had that extra little bit of savviness around the middle. Again, building on some of the players, I noticed McColgan, he got man of the match against Kerry, and very richly deserved man of the match. He was a real live wire, a real bright spark. I would say his lack of experience maybe and his rawness maybe probably went against them a little bit, possibly against Tyrone. They probably, that stranglehold that we know that Tyrone can put her on defensively on teams when they've got that bit between their teeth. I'd say he would have learned an awful lot from both games. Boyle, again, a couple of good performances in there. Jay McGrady definitely put his hand up as well. He definitely played very well against Kerry. And then Jack McKelvey, again, a player I pointed out in the McKenna Cup as well. Again, kicked a very good point against Tyrone, and from what I generally heard, acquitted himself fairly well. So Donegal have some great talent there for the future. I think this season might be a little bit early for them, which is why I would still maybe, even though getting those 2 points from against Kerry, or maybe 2 points that nobody expected them to get, I do think I still would put them. I do still think they'll struggle for their Division 1 status. They need to get 4 points out of somewhere. I know Galway are suffering a lot of injuries at the minute. The Monaghan match is going to be massive, so there's potentially 4, and Roscommon as well. I think that team's good enough to really put it up to this Roscommon team. Obviously, Roscommon have come out of the gates very fast in this National League. Who knows? I think it'll very much depend on when Donegal gets who. I think if they get Monaghan, if they get Monaghan and Roscommon in the latter stages of the league, you might get Roscommon maybe having one eye on the Connacht Championship. So they might be rotating a little bit, or maybe, I don't know, they'll have a few of their players back. They'll have Ryan McHugh and a few others back for that stage as well. So Donegal will maybe be going a bit stronger, and then maybe Roscommon might have one eye on the Connacht Championship. So while I would still worry for Donegal's stature in Division 1, any of them teams, it looks like any of them teams in Division 1 this year could go down. Any team could get pulled into a relegation fight. I think Kerry are probably safe. I think Mayo are probably safe. I just think they have enough energy around the middle third that they'll be able to run enough teams off their feet. And they have a sharp enough full forward. I do think they'll struggle to get. Well, I think they'll struggle to get scores. I think they'll get enough of a spread around the team. And there's always a good feel-good factor around National League time with Mayo. So I do think they'll do enough to stay up as well. Off the back of the weekend, off the back of some of the injuries that Galway have, I would maybe worry a little bit about Galway. Unfortunately, they lost Damien Comer at the weekend, and I think everyone in the GAA community would agree with me in wishing Damien all the best, and hopefully it's not as bad as what everyone initially was fearing. Hopefully he'll get back, and hopefully he'll get back in and play a bit of football this year again. But if not, if he doesn't get a chance to play anymore this season, we wish him all the best in his recovery, and we can't wait to see him back in a Galway jersey sooner rather than later. So I wish him all the best. But going back into my original point, I do think, they're just missing a few players. Depends on when they get these lads back. So Donegal could probably get 2 points off Galway. They're well within their chances of getting 2 points off Monaghan. They're well within an opportunity of getting points off Roscommon. I think maybe Mayo is probably a bit beyond them. So they still have great opportunity of maintaining their Division 1 status. But I do think they're probably a little bit at risk of, they're still a little bit at risk of going down at this moment in time. So, like I will get on to Monaghan a little bit later as well. Like Monaghan, I think I would worry a little bit for Donegal. Depends on how quickly they get their players back. I would worry about them maintaining their Division 1 status, but equally, they could pull it out. Getting those 2 points against Kerry, I think, were massively important for them. I think if they had lost the Kerry game as well, I would really would have worried for them as well, along with Monaghan. But they've given themselves a fighting chance of pulling themselves out of relegation. They've got the panel, they've got the players there. It's whether they can just get it all hooked up together in time to save their Division 1 status. We'll have to wait and see. So now we move on to Down. Now these lads have had a very strong McKenna Cup and they've carried that form into the first 2 rounds of their National League campaign. So again, Down in Division 3, former aristocrats of Ulster football, joint top on the All-Ireland lists for Ulster teams, sleeping giant of Ulster football. They will not want to stay in Division 3. They're at worst a Division 2 team. So they'll be pushing hard to get out of Division 2. They'll also be trying to guarantee senior All-Ireland football this season as well. So again, they've got them. So far so good. They're building a lot of nice momentum early in the division. So I still predict them to have a very strong Division 3. I do still think I will put them favourites along with Cavan to go up, particularly, and there's nothing I've seen in the first 2 rounds of the league that would maybe counter that. The only thing maybe that might work against Down maybe will be the workload of the matches, or if they pick up some injuries. Again, this condensed season, I think we're going to see a lot of inconsistencies with a lot of counties across all 4 divisions. They'll be good one week and maybe a bit weaker the following week. I do think the condensed season and this congested championship, I think, is going to suit teams with the bigger squads. So even if Division 3 counties, again, whether we like to admit it or not, are playing at a bit of a lower level at this stage of the year. If Down get into the All-Ireland Senior Championship, that might maybe come back to bite them later on in the year. So they'll want to get up, they'll want to get into playing better quality teams. I think this Down panel is much better. I think they should be playing that Division 2 football. I think they showed their class against Tipperary. That's not an easy game to win down in Tipperary. Not an easy one for them. Not an easy place to go. Down the travel, a lot of that. Maybe it was the travel down, the travel up. Your recoveries affected coming back up. You don't get a chance to do the right recovery coming back up the road. I know from training down the country for years. I was only playing like club and reserve football, but when you drive down, when you're a student and you're living away from your home county and you're travelling in a car down, you're training for 2 hours, or you're putting in that level of work, and then you're sitting in a car back up the road again. You get out of that car, you feel stiff, and it does affect you for a few days after it. So maybe it was a lot of that, maybe sitting on a bus coming back up from Tipperary. Did that maybe affect their early performance against Antrim? Possibly. They did struggle in the first half, right up into the second half against Antrim. I'd say Antrim were probably a lot better than people are giving credit for. I'd say maybe Down were maybe struggling a little bit off the back of the previous week. So when you put those 2 factors together, and as I said from the McKenna Cup, Antrim are strong around the middle third. If not a little bit naive, they are still very strong around the middle third, and they can build play well, and they have a couple of very sharp inside forwards as well. So that Antrim team at this level can give anyone a run for their monies. So if you're not quite on it, that Antrim team has the ability there to take points off you. So I'd say probably both of those probably played in. You've probably got a little bit of that early National League. Maybe teams are not quite fully match fit yet as well, because it's so early in the season. So again, they're strong players from the McKenna Cup. From what I can gather, again, I haven't got a chance to watch a lot of these matches. I'm going off match reports. I'm going off limited highlights footage and sort of score updates and commentary on Twitter. So I do still think like Havering again still scoring heavily in the full forward line, and they still seem to be building their play very well from the middle third as well for Down. What do I expect going into the middle third of the National League, or the middle part of the National League? Down still have some big teams to play in that mix for promotion. They still have Cavan to play. They still have a spiky Fermanagh to play as well. So I think, and then you'll more than likely, I think they're going to have a National League final probably to play later on in the year. So I think the matches, the competition in these matches are good for this Down panel. I think if they have ambitions to go up into Division 2, they really have to beat everyone around them. I think they can afford to lose one match maybe. I'd say they'll probably be allowing for the Cavan game there. They still have Westmeath. Westmeath still have a lot to say about this Division 3 league campaign as well. Plus, off the back of their opening 2 rounds of the game, I think Offaly could be a tough county, judging off the back of momentum. Momentum is so important in Gaelic football, and Offaly have got good momentum at this moment in time. A brilliant battling win against Fermanagh, and then they walloped Antrim in the first week. So I think they potentially will have something to say about this National League as well. So, but I'd say maybe the Westmeath game is probably the big one. Westmeath, Cavan are the 2 big games for Down this year as to whether they will get out of Division 3 and possibly play senior football this year in the All-Ireland series. If they lose or draw one or both of those games, it could cost them. Now, Cavan have beat Westmeath on the first weekend, so that's taking a little bit of a dent out of them. So even if Down maybe do lose to a Cavan or a Westmeath, they can still get their promotion out of it off the back of that. They definitely can't lose to both of them. They can probably get away with losing to one or the other, but I definitely think they can't lose to both. They have to beat a spiky Offaly team, and they have to beat a spiky Fermanagh team as well. So we'll see where that leaves them. But I will be was very impressed with Down in the McKenna Cup. They seem to have taken that form and that momentum from the McKenna Cup into their opening 2 rounds of the league. I would maybe worry a little bit about their consistency between the 2 games, but so far so good for Down, and I wish them all the best with this league campaign, because they're too good a traditional county to be stuck in Division 3. Now, neatly moving on from Down, we next have Cavan. So again, another very strong, consistent start to the league. Again, like Down, got to a semi-final of the McKenna Cup. While they disappointed me against Tyrone, still had a fairly solid McKenna Cup. Again, 2 wins from 2 in the opening part. They're building momentum very nicely so far this season. Good spread of scores over their 2 games. A very, very good psychological win over Westmeath, particularly after the defeat to them in the Tailteann Cup final last year. Missed out on them guaranteeing their senior status at All-Ireland level. So I'd say it was good to get one over them early. Plus, that's a big 4-pointer in relation to promotion as well, and head-to-head. So if all 3 counties, if there's 3 counties or 4 counties all sort of level on points, or 2, in relation to going up, they'll have a strong, they'll have that head-to-head over them, over Westmeath, and they should by the end of the National League have a strong scoring difference as well. Again, off that they had a big win over Tipperary, again helping their scoring difference, and obviously they have that head-to-head over Westmeath as well. Now, they still have some big games coming up as well. I do think like that Fermanagh team will still cause a lot of counties issues. I think Antrim definitely have it in them to possibly cause Cavan a few issues as well. So by no means are Cavan home and hosed yet out of Division 3. They have a lot of work to do yet, but they still have Down to play as well. They've definitely, they've really given themselves a strong footing so far in their opening 2 games. So they've got their 4 points, they've got their win over Westmeath, they've got their head-to-head over Westmeath, they've got their scoring difference up off the back of that big win from Tipperary as well. So I said off the back of the McKenna Cup, I expect the Cavan to be extremely competitive in Division 3. And there's nothing I've seen from the 2 results and the 2 match reports that I've read from their opening 2 games in the National League to make me think any different. I think along with Westmeath and Down, they're the clear 3 front runners. I said it before the National League. I'm maintaining and I'm sticking with it. I do still think those are the 3. It's between those 3 teams. I thought Tipperary had an outside chance. I think they've had a big injury in the last week or so as well, so they've had a poor enough start to the National League as well. I just think these teams are sharper. I like the look of that Westmeath team. They've had a tough couple of years, but they're definitely on the rise again. I think Cavan have had a tough couple of years as well. I don't think they didn't do very well over the COVID periods. They fell down through the National League. They were a Division 1 team at one stage and have now dropped down to Division 3. Now, there is a core element of players that are still there that did play Division 2, Division 1 football for this Cavan team. So they definitely have the experience, they definitely have the quality there to lift themselves out of Division 3. I think they should be definitely no further, definitely no lower than a Division 2 team. And I do think we will have additional teams in Division 1 or Division 2 next year. We'll have at least one Ulster team in Division 2 next year. So this Cavan team is definitely just bubbling nicely. I'd love to see them in senior football this year. And I think they've got it, and they've got an outside chance of getting into Sam Maguire this year. But if they don't, and they go into the Tailteann Cup, and if Down go into the Tailteann Cup as well, I really do think they should have won it last year, in my opinion. But I think they have a very, very strong chance if they drop into the Tailteann Cup. I really think and I think it'll help their momentum if they can get Division 2 status out of the league this year, and if they won a Tailteann Cup, I think that will be a great launch pad into Division 2 and senior football next year. So, and I do think they have a good chance if they get back up into Division 2 football that they'll stay there at the first attempt. 2 strong wins against good competition at this level. Westmeath, Tipperary. You could make arguments. Obviously, I think Westmeath are one of the teams that are going to go up, or potentially go up, and you could also make an argument for Tipperary there that they have that ability. They do have the ability. They did win. They won a Munster title not that long ago. So I do think that that Tipperary team have played quarterfinals in the All Ireland series as well. So they have experience of playing strong teams and top teams. I would actually put that Tipperary and Cavan team, of a similar sort of level, I think, to maybe even a Roscommon. So Cavan definitely bubbling nicely. I would predict them to push on now. Again, the next, like all of these teams, I think will know a lot more by the end of the next 3 weeks stint. of the National League, I think we'll have a real good strong case for which of the 3 or 4 teams are going to go up in Division 3. Offaly have put their hand up this year as well. I think they've made a good strong start. I don't know, I don't think Offaly have enough, from what I know of, the very limited knowledge I know of Offaly football. I think maybe I'm wrong, again, could be proved wrong. I don't think they'll stay the distance. I think they're going to be a little bit like Roscommon in Division 1. I think they're maybe a bit further down the road than some of the teams that they've played, fitness wise and the like, and I do expect them to fall away a little. The other thing that really that I noticed is a couple of people have mentioned about the form of Darren McVitie coming back into the panel. To have an experienced player like him coming back into that Cavan panel, and from what I can gather, is playing well too. I think he was one of my mentioned players in the McKenna Cup video as well. Will definitely be a strong plus and a strong feather in the Cavan cap. So that's my and I do think they'll have a strong league, and that's my assessment of where Cavan are at the minute. I think the Westmeath and Down games are going to be the 2 important games for them this year, and there's also potential banana skins for them over Fermanagh and Offaly as well there. Moving neatly on to Fermanagh, they've won 1 from 2, and they'll be disappointed with that Offaly result. Very low scoring game. I was following it on Twitter. They had a poor start. I think they gave away the goal very early. They did fight back to get themselves back in the game. It could have went very wrong very quickly. Offaly seemed to be making a habit of quick starts. They did the same against Antrim. So they fought back well. I still think this Fermanagh team is going to be a spiky team in Division 3. There's a lot of fairly big hitters in Division 3 this year. Like I mentioned with the Cavan slide, we've got Cavan themselves, we've Down, we've Tipperary, we've Westmeath. They've got over the banana skin hurdle of Offaly. They've Antrim to come as well, which is definitely going to be a banana skin for this Fermanagh team. So I think their Division 3 status can go either way at this stage. They impressed me an awful lot in the McKenna Cup. They have the ability to win and hold on to ball around the middle of the field. So, and they seem to have James Quigley back in the full forward line as well, which is a big plus for them. What kind of conditioning is Quigley in? He's one of the great, skill-wise, he's one of the greatest forwards in Ireland at the minute, in my opinion. The man can kick points for fun, very, very sharp. I think there's a strong leader in there as well. But in the past, we've seen maybe a little bit of flaky enough commitment from some of the Fermanagh boys. So can they keep this good start going? I think whenever this Fermanagh team's I think they have a very similar mentality to Tyrone, in a sense of when they get the taste for it, when they're up for a game, they're going to be a very, very sticky team to go up against, and that's not just the National League. I think that goes forward into the All-Ireland series and the Ulster and the All-Ireland series as well. I think this team's definitely going to have a say on this season. I do think their Division 3 status can go either way. So I think they could still lose to some. They still have some big teams to play. They've still got most of the big teams in the division to play. So they definitely I would predict them to probably be around mid-table. I do expect them to be a mid-table Division 3 team. I do expect them to play Tailteann Cup football this year, unless they can somehow, unless they get a good run in the Ulster Championship. But I think the competitiveness of Ulster this year is going to go on to a different level this year, and I think the likes of your Fermanaghs, I think Fermanagh, Antrim, I don't know. I even think Monaghan maybe could miss out this year, and Donegal maybe. I just think that level of those front running teams. I just think the Derrys, the Armaghs, the Tyrones. I think it's maybe a bit early for Down, but again, any of them teams, like, to say that Fermanagh can't, like Fermanagh proved, and again McKenna Cup, they proved that they could compete with that Tyrone team for 40 minutes of a match. If they get a couple of goals, with James Quigley in the full forward line, in the Ulster Championship against any of them big counties, if they bang in 3-4 goals, they could very easily bang in 3-4 goals. And as we've seen against Tyrone, against Roscommon, very, very hard to claw that back. Hard pitches, full fitness of mid-spring probably now. Ulster Championship's going to be, but I do think the teams like Fermanagh, like Cavan or Down, for example, and Antrim that are likely to be in the Tailteann Cup conversation. I think if whatever Ulster teams from them four play Tailteann Cup football, I just think that the preparation, particularly if they get a run in the Ulster Championship, I just think they're going to be so much more primed than anywhere else in Ireland. So I do think one of the Ulster teams are probably going to win the Tailteann Cup this year, and I would put Fermanagh in that bracket. This team on their day has the ability to beat Division 1 teams, but they also have the ability to lose to Division 4 teams. They're like a Tyrone in that sense, where they are a bit Jekyll and Hyde. They were... I think they're a bit short to fight for promotion this year. I just think that the Downs, the Westmeaths and the Cavans of this division just a little bit more further down the road. That's not... But if I see Fermanagh in the top two at the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, if they had got over the line against Offaly, I would have definitely maybe revised that and was like, right, 2 from 2. They're in the conversation here. Because do they have the ability to beat Down and Cavan and Westmeath? Absolutely. On their day, this Fermanagh team can beat every single team in this division. They can and probably should be beaten. But I don't know. I just think the inconsistencies of this Fermanagh team, that loss against Offaly's maybe put that little bit of a doubt in my head. I hope to God I'm wrong, because I think Fermanagh is every Ulster GAA fan. I think Fermanagh is their second team. I think everyone in Ulster, if they go out of the Ulster Championship, they would love to see Fermanagh win an Ulster title. We'd love to see them win an All-Ireland title. I'd love nothing more than to see Fermanagh in a Tailteann Cup final this year. But we'll have to wait and see. I think if they can keep fit and keep development and keep bubbling away, I think they'll definitely survive Division 3. I just think they're a bit short this year for Division 3 promotion, but they could easily do it. There's a lot of football to play this season. There's a lot of football still to play in the National League. They could go out and win 3 from 3 in the next stage of the National League. Cavan, Down and Westmeath could get 1 from 3, and all of a sudden Fermanagh are in that hunt. I wouldn't be surprised going into the last round of this league campaign, you see maybe 4 or even 5 teams all in with a shout of promotion. I do think that's how evenly matched this division is. So I think for tension, for closeness, I think Division 3 is the division to be in this, or to watch this season. So that's my roundup of Fermanagh. Monaghan. Okay, this is where I could possibly get a few, ruffle a few feathers with this one. They've lost both their opening games. They again lost to a sharp Armagh team and had a crushing defeat to Kerry. And what would alarm me is that was a weak enough Kerry team. I know it's like what I said in the Donegal commentary. You could put a third Kerry team out and they'd still probably beat most of the teams in Division 2 and some of the teams in Division 1. So, again, do Monaghan have the ability to stay up in Division 1? Absolutely. Do I think they will? I think they're going to struggle. I'm not going to lie. Someone read out a stat at the weekend that this is the first time that since Monaghan's got into Division 1 that they haven't taken anything from their first 2 games. Um, and while I do think they pulled off a Houdini, I think they got 1 point from 2 games last year in the opening rounds in the National League, and somehow pulled off a Houdini act to stay up. I don't see where their points are going to come from. Now, they could go out. I do think they can beat. Can they beat? They've got Tyrone at home. Can they beat Tyrone at Clonus? Absolutely. They've Donegal. I think Donegal is away, I think. Can they beat Donegal in the National League? Absolutely. Could they put it up and beat a Galway team that's maybe looking a little bit weak at the moment? Just with players injured and players away from the squad on extended breaks. Probably they have a good chance they can beat them. Is there enough ability in that Monaghan team to beat Roscommon? Absolutely. I just think they're a little bit behind the preparation, where I think they're going with Roscommon starting the league so strongly, 2 from 2. They've Mayo to play, who again 3 points, 3 from 2. I still have to play Roscommon, Monaghan or Mayo. I don't think they're. I just don't think they're going. I don't know. I just don't think they have enough Arsenal in the tank. Now they have the forwards. They definitely have the forwards to get themselves out of this, particularly when McManus comes back as well. To get out of this, I haven't seen, like, if you look there, the intensity and the combativeness that I've seen from Monaghan in previous league campaigns, I haven't seen it so far. I didn't see it in the McKenna Cup either. So that's what worries me. That's what makes me think that I think by the time that Monaghan get up to that level, I just think there's not going to be enough points left for them to maintain their safety. They need, if they lose their next 2 games, I think they're gone. I just at this moment, from what I've seen of other counties in Division 1, on current form, I don't think they're going to beat Roscommon. I don't think they're going to beat Tyrone. I don't think they're going to beat Mayo. And I'd say if they're going to beat them, off the back off until they get some players back, depending on when they get Galway. I think they maybe might be able to beat Galway if they get them at home, and they don't have the players back. I can't see it now. And saying that, they have had some very good performers. O'Hanlon and Michael Bannigan definitely have played very well so far. They've got some of their key players back and playing well again too. So they are building, they are moving in the right direction. I just think by the time they get it right, they could have left it too late this season. Now the last bullet point there, they always seem to prove me wrong. I thought Monaghan were favourites to get relegated this last 2 seasons, and on both occasions they've pulled the proverbial rabbit out of the hat and proved me wrong. If in 5-6 weeks time Monaghan are sitting on 5, 6, 7 points, I'll be like, didn't see it coming, but is it in there? Absolutely. There's enough talent, there's enough ability, there's enough about this Monaghan squad that they could stave off relegation for yet another season. So I think it's definitely, like Donegal, I think it's very much situational. I think it's very much in the balance. Can they get some players back? Can they get them up to speed? Can they get some of their more senior players up to speed? I do think they need to be a lot more resolute defensively. I do think they need to be a lot more combative if they want to stay up in this division this season. If they get that right, we all know what they're like. But they have lost some big players coming into this season. They've lost some leadership. Ryan McAnaspey's gone. The 2 Hughes brothers are not back in there yet. Wiley's gone. Drew Wiley's gone as well. So they've lost a lot of leadership, and they've lost a lot of that, where a lot of that combative strength come out of over the last couple of seasons. They have lost a lot of that, and they do look a little bit of a soft touch to play at the minute. So that's where I'm coming down on this Monaghan team. I love Monaghan. I love watching Monaghan. I love what they're doing. I love what they're wringing out of the minimal resources that they have. They don't have a big playing population. They don't have maybe a strong they have great facilities, and they have great clubs, and they have great ethos and a great hunger for football, and the fantastic fans as well. So I love seeing Monaghan do well. I think the GAA, like Fermanagh, I think the GAA is richer for having a strong Monaghan team. Everyone's had great days out in Clonus as well. So I hope to God I'm wrong. I hope Monaghan can stay up, because more Ulster teams we have in Division 1, the better, I think. But I think they're going to leave it a bit late this year. And that's where I come down on Monaghan. So, yeah. And now back to the Jackal and Hydes of Ulster football. Again, I called it in the McKenna Cup one. They always start the McKenna Cup, or they always start the league slow. I said that while I expected them to beat Roscommon, I would not have been surprised if they lost. And hey presto, they lost the first round of the league. So they played well in places. Some of their key performers, some of their key players that haven't played well for 18 months, are starting to come back, are starting to play well again. Their two midfielders played well against Donegal and played in parts against Roscommon from what I've seen in that match. Conor Myler seems to be coming back to form. Kieran McGeary seems to be coming back into a bit of form as well. They did concede some very disappointing goals against Roscommon. The slow first half as well would be a huge concern for them, and the softness in which Roscommon got those goals would also be a big concern. Sharpness and discipline. Again, first half against Roscommon. They just seem to be playing in slow motion. They seem to lack that little bit of sharpness and that little bit of bite. They come back well in the start of the second half. They managed to managed to get a 3-point advantage, and I think I wouldn't be overly critical. I wouldn't be like a lot of people coming out saying, "Oh, is this Tyrone team in trouble?" and "Is this Tyrone team in trouble?" and is it the end of this Tyrone current incarnation? I thought all of that was utter rubbish. If you look at the history of Tyrone football, they always seem to have a great McKenna Cup and then roll over in the first couple of rounds of the National League. Factor in that this was one of the matches I actually watched that was on the TV, the Roscommon game, and they almost got it perfect. They were 3 points up. Dara Canavan played in. Darren McCurry fumbles the ball, with a gaping goal chance in front of him, drops the ball, and then not long after, Roscommon go down the pitch and score their first goal. So there's a 6-point swing. So if Tyrone get their goal, they approach the game differently as well. Who knows what might have happened if they scored that goal, got a 6-point lead. Tyrone automatically would have sat in more. With Darren McCurry, Cathal McShane and Dara Canavan, they would have been able to sit in and hit Roscommon on the break with those high balls into Cathal McShane. Probably would have had Matty Donnelly off the bench as well. They'll hit the team on the break. And with that speed and the speed and pace in that middle eight, and Tyrone were famed a couple of seasons ago, and a lot of that panel were famed for their quick transition up the pitch on the break. Are still there, and they still have that ability to cut teams open on the break. So that's why it's very dangerous to let Tyrone get a lead on you. Could have been a very, very, very different outcome because they conceded that goal and that brought it back level. They had to come out and play a bit more. And I do think this Tyrone team are worried about energy levels a little bit at the minute. I do think maybe they haven't as much fitness work done as maybe what a lot of people maybe might think. But in saying that, following week there was a lot of strong statements coming out of the camp. The Donegal game was going to be a very important game, and they were going to show up. And from what I can gather, they did. Didn't get a chance to watch the Donegal game. Followed it on Twitter. And right from the get-go, it was like 1 point, 2 points to no score, 3 points to no score, 3-1, 4-1, 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, 6-3. No, and then it was 6-3, I think, at halftime. And then they picked up where they left off at the start of the second half. And they really, from what I can gather and from what I heard from people that were at the game, they bullied Donegal around the middle of the field. Again, they do have a very sharp trio in the full forward line. Against Donegal, Darren McCurry's kicking 7 frees. Cal McShane's starting to slowly get back to that form he had in the All-Ireland season. And Dara Canavan, again, I think is having his best season to date so far in a red and white jersey. Again, some of the players to watch in the coming weeks. Again, Richie Donnelly was an enigma to me. He had very bad in McKenna Cup final, but his opening rounds were very strong. Again, I think he was a bit weak against. No, he didn't play well against Roscommon, but I think there's definitely a player in there. I think he's one to watch. I think if he gets it right and if he can get a run and he can just get that bit of confidence, I think he's going to be a very dangerous player. Connor Myler's getting his confidence back. He's building nicely. Never really had a dip in form, and I think he was one of their better performers last year. But against Roscommon, he was one of those consistent players against Roscommon that right from the off just kept chugging and chugging and chugging. And I think he's grown into a real leader in that Tyrone team. And then Dara Canavan. What more is there to be said about Dara Canavan so far this season? He really has been a shining light attacking wise for this Tyrone team. Kicked a couple of lovely points from play against Donegal that made all the highlights reels. So a mix, again, a stereotypical mixed start for this Tyrone team. Bit soft in their concession of the goals against Roscommon. Some great performances coming through. I think Munro again building nicely. Again kicked a good score against Donegal. His distribution of the ball, I was very impressed with his distribution of the ball. So there's definitely a player in there. I think they were very close to getting their tactics right against Roscommon, but when it went wrong, it all just seemed to unravel. When Tyrone have to come out and chase a game, it always just seems to unravel a little bit for them, which would be maybe concern them a little bit. Much better against Donegal, maybe a bit disappointing against Roscommon, but I think the next couple of weeks are going to be a massive couple of weeks for them with the injury. They've got Galway and Tuam next. Historically, they never do well in Tuam. But Galway are going through their own little bit of an injury crisis at the minute, and a little bit of a crisis of form, similar to what Tyrone would have been going through this time last year. So we'll see how they get on. Again, they've lost Damien Comer this weekend as well. They're already we're missing the fella that was playing for Kilmacud. I've completely blanked on his name now. Finnerty's injured as well, and now add Comer into that list. I think they could be maybe a bit blunt up front, possibly, which should theoretically make that game a little bit more competitive for Tyrone. I think they may after that. I think they're the two Connacht teams, and then I think it's I want to say Monaghan after that in Clones. So it's going to be a big 3 weeks for Tyrone. I think they need to get at least two. I think if they don't get at least two from 6 out of them games, I think they're going to be dragged into a relegation battle, and I wouldn't rule it out with this Tyrone team. This Tyrone team could go out and absolutely blitz all 3 teams off the park, or they could go out and get blitzed by all 3 teams off the park. Tyrone in National League football are notoriously, hot and cold. So we'll see how they get on. I think they're bubbling nicely. I think they're looking further down the road, and I would even say they'll probably be a bit sketchy in the Ulster Championship as well, because I do think they're looking further down the road. I think they're hoping to. I think they're using this in the Ulster Championship to try and iron out the kinks. I always said that if this Tyrone team win enough ball, they're a match for any team in Ireland. that would also be the biggest concern I have against this Tyrone team. I just think, can they, like, against the Mayos, against the Kerrys, against the Dublins, in particular, and the Galways, the 4 big teams, can they win enough ball? Last year against Derry, they got cleaned out in midfield. Last year against Armagh, they got cleaned out again in midfield. And even in the National League against some of the other teams, cleaned out in midfield numerous occasions last season. So I think that is the big area that this Tyrone team need to work on. I think if they crack midfield, they're definitely a contender for an All-Ireland this year. And I think a lot of the top teams, the Kerrys, the Galways, the Dublins, the Mayos, the Derrys, the Armaghs, I think they'll all be looking at Tyrone and going, don't want to get them in the latter stages of the championship, because by that stage they'll be flying fit. They'll have an entire season of data. If they stay injury free and they can sort out their midfield, I think no one will want to play them. I do think they're still a little short for an All-Ireland this season, just from what I've seen so far and off the back of last season. I just think they're a little bit short. I think they're a little bit short for an Ulster title this year too, if I'm being honest, because I think they're going to be looking further down the road. I just think they're going to get caught cold in the Ulster Championship. But equally, if Tyrone win the Ulster Championship, I wouldn't be shocked. I think nobody in Ireland would be shocked if Tyrone win an Ulster title this year, and I think nobody in Ireland would be shocked if they go out in the first round this year. And again, similar with the National League, Tyrone get relegated, I don't think anyone in Ireland would be shocked. And if Tyrone get to a league final, I don't think anyone in Ireland would be shocked either. So it's just the nature of this Tyrone team. So my roundup, Division 1 roundup, Armagh leading the way with 3 points. And again, 2 very strong performances. I watched the Mayo game and caught the highlights of the Monaghan game. So they seem to have 2 strong performances, 3 points, and I think they're going in on a very strong footing. I think they're not far away from, realistically, 6 points should guarantee your safety. 5 points should get you safe. So Armagh are one win out of 4 away from pretty much guarantee their safety. Then comes in Tyrone, disappointing first week. Okay performance first week, and then a good performance second week. Again, I think overall, I think they'll be content enough. They could be sitting on 4 from 4 at the moment. If things had went slightly differently in the Roscommon game. Donegal, I think, massively will be over the moon with that win against Kerry. The battling performance and the unearthing of the new players against Kerry again will be very, 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 very pleasing to them. Probably 2 points I'd say they didn't expect to get. Again, very disappointing against Tyrone. You always, I think I read somewhere as well, it was the first time Tyrone had beaten Donegal in the league since 2018, I think. So I think Donegal will be very disappointed with not only the result, but I think the performance in that game too. I think they'll be very disappointed with. From what I heard, Tyrone completely dominated them in the middle third. Because Tyrone dominated them in the middle third, I do think Mayo are going to dominate them in the middle third. I think Armagh are going to dominate them in the middle third. If Galway have some way fit panel, I think they're going to dominate them in midfield, and then that only leaves you with Roscommon and Monaghan left. And is that enough points for them to secure their safety? And I even think Roscommon probably might beat them in midfield as well, off the back of the Tyrone game. So I would struggle to see, there's enough talent in that Donegal team to survive. I think themselves and Monaghan are, if there's one of those 2 Ulster teams are likely to go down, I think it's probably going to come from one of those 2. And that leads me on to Monaghan. Again, I think there's enough in that panel not to get pessimistic as a Monaghan fan, but I think they're going to leave it a little too late for their Division 1 status this year. I think Donegal and Monaghan are definitely going to be in a relegation fight. I think Tyrone, if they're not careful, can get sucked into that as well. barring a disaster, I think Armagh will be safe from relegation. I don't think there's enough quite there yet to push for a league final spot. It's not out of the realms of possibility for Tyrone or Armagh to get into a league final, but I just think there's bigger fish to fry for both counties, and I think they're looking further down the road. So that's where I think things are there. I think Armagh are going to be comfortable enough mid-table. I think Tyrone should be safe, but are a bit short for league final positions. And I think Donegal and Monaghan, I hope they both stay up, but I think they're definitely going to be in a relegation battle. But they both have the ability to stay up. Division 2, from an Ulster perspective, we've only got Derry there. They've got 4 points from 4. Struggled a bit against Louth. Great win against Tipperary. Still got 2 of the big teams to go. So they've done what they can. They've beat what's been put in front of them. And I do expect them to push on. 2 big games. 2 or the 3 big games still to come. They've got one of the potential banana skins out of the way. So I'd say by the end of the next group of games, I think we'll definitely know with Derry. I think we're very unfortunate to miss out last year. So we'll see. I definitely still think they'll be one of the top 2 teams. They'll be very unlucky if they don't. On to Division 3. We have 2 teams, 4 from 4, Cavan and Down. Cavan with a great win over one of their fellow promotion rivals in Westmeath, and a strong win in their second game. Down again, a strong win in their first match, and then a battling win over Antrim in their second game. So I think from a confidence wise and from a learning perspective, I think both of those teams will take a lot out of their opening 2 games. Fermanagh 1-1, lost 1. Will be bitterly disappointed with the Offaly defeat. It was definitely there for them. They could have been sitting up at the top with they could have been in Offaly's position, up along with both Fermanagh and Cavan, with 4 from 4. I think definitely. I think Fermanagh. I think Down and Cavan definitely pushing for promotion. I think whoever beats. I think if both teams survive, Offaly, Tipperary, and Westmeath. Again, I think Cavan have already beaten Westmeath. I think if Down lose to Westmeath, they have to beat Cavan. To beat Westmeath, they can afford to lose to Cavan. I think both teams have to beat Offaly. I think both teams have to beat Tipperary, which I think some of them have done. Antrim lost both games against Down. Didn't expect them to beat Down. Very nearly did beat Down. So they'll take a lot of heart from that. Be very bitterly disappointed with the opening match against Offaly. But overall, I think we'll definitely get at least one of the 2 teams out. I think we'll get at least one of the 4 teams, possibly 2 of the 4 teams, Ulster teams, out of Division 3 and up into Division 1 or Division 2, sorry. And unfortunately, I think Antrim maybe might miss out this season on safety, and Fermanagh possibly, if things, depending on how things go, similar to Tyrone, on their day they could fight their way into a promotion place, and equally they could drop down into Division 4. Either or, I don't think anyone in Ireland would be shocked with either or. I think Antrim definitely have the capabilities of staying in Division 3, but I think they need 2 points from the first game of the next 3 to give them any chance. I think if they don't win the next game, if they lose the next game, they're starting to run out of points, and I think it's probably going to look fairly ominous for them. Right, so that's nearly me up to an hour and a half, so I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in this time. Again, I wish you all the best. I wish all the Ulster teams in the National League the very best, and we hope to see you back again.